All right. Well, Nico, it's great to see you again.
Thank you for having me here, Van. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I think we were doing the math. I think we've seen each other in 4 cities, 2 countries. I invited you to Mexico, but you couldn't come last week. But it's awesome to have you here in the Bay Area. Great to have you stay at my place last night. So it's thank you for coming.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And I think it's always great for me to come here and experience the vibe of, it's a different vibe here in the Bay Area. So I always leave inspired.
Yeah, no, it's cool to have you here. So, well, let's just begin. So tell me a little bit more about what Dapta does. What do you guys do?
For sure. Yeah. Dapta is a software platform, and we're the fastest way for a small business to get value from AI. We've seen a lot of companies, and I've seen throughout my career, a lot of small businesses that know that they should be doing something. So they know they should be doing something with AI. They know AI could benefit their business, but they have no idea how to use AI in their business processes. Maybe they use ChatGPT, or maybe they have their different set of tools. But we try to make it very easy and fast for these small businesses to use AI to automate their sales and operations processes without having to know all the different technical aspects of AI. So we try to make it very easy for them.
That's cool. And maybe share a little story. Like, what's a fun story of a customer using Dapta to do something that might have seemed impossible without Dapta, or somebody who's like just a really cool customer story?
Yeah, so we have very interesting customers. I would say one of our customers that comes to mind right now. We have this company that is a reseller for DirecTV in Phoenix, where I'm currently based. And they started working with us a while back. One of our first use cases was automating blogs for your website. So this was something that they wanted to do to drive traffic to the website. But then when we released our use cases around voice AI and chat AI, they also started automating some other processes. So this is a company, a small business, very traditional, targets commercial places like restaurants, casinos, and so on. And they had a lot of manual processes, especially in sales and customer support. And they didn't know any different way to do that. They had their own internal tools, which was really interesting. They didn't use a commercial CRM. They had their own technology. And once they found Dapta, they started automating all these processes one by one. So they started with their blogs for the website, which is a really easy one. Then they automated their outbound to get new customers to their company. Then they automate their customer support, helping them troubleshoot their DirecTV problems. And we've seen them grow from basically using our platform for very specific things like writing blogs or something to automating 4 or 5 business critical processes within their company. So it feels like magic to these types of companies to automate some of these processes with AI, and that just pushes up their bottom line, and everyone's happy when that happens.
Yeah, super cool. So I'm sure we're going to go much deeper a little bit later into the company and the product. But maybe we'll talk a little bit about you. So you are a second-time founder, and your first company you started when you were very young. So maybe just walk us through your story as an entrepreneur. Like, what was the first company you started? Why did you start it? Just, why start the life of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I didn't have a master plan. I think it just everything just started happening. It was a snowball. I started my career very young. I took an HTML class when I was in high school, and I was like 12 years old when I learned, when I had my HTML class, and then I was 13 when I really put it into practice and started building websites. Then I became a freelancer. So crazy thing happened. I had a relative from Spain that wanted a website for his company. He didn't have anyone to help him with his website. So I just said, I don't know how to do it, but I can figure it out. I took a class. So I was 13 at the time, started working with him. And then it was a good result. He referred me to some other people. Then I started getting traction building websites for different companies. And it all kind of snowballed, and people were asking me to develop much bigger projects for them. I became a freelancer working for companies in the US very quickly. And I was a teenager. So I remember my dad had to go to these customers back in Colombia and some others online, and he had to sign the contracts for me because I was underage. So when I was 17, I decided to start my first company because I didn't want to be embarrassed by my dad going over and signing the contract. So I never planned to build a company or to be an entrepreneur. I think it just happened, and there was no way back.
So super organic. And so what was that company?
So the first company I founded, a company called Imagine Apps. It started as my freelancing business, building websites, building web apps for companies. But then at one point I was taking on larger projects. So that I partnered with my partner David. Back then, that was like 2012, 2013. And we started working on much larger projects. We hired people, we hired developers, designers, started working on our first projects. It was very challenging for both of us. We had never built software at a larger scale. Our first projects were really, really challenging and very difficult to execute. But then we kept going, building much larger and larger projects, and we were able to scale that business. And we were fortunate to get customers from all over the world, mostly North America, the US and Canada, working on their software projects with talent from Latin America. So mostly Colombia, but we hired people in Peru, Venezuela, Mexico, all over Latin America. And it gave me a lot of experience and confidence to keep building and just go on building tougher, harder, bigger projects.
Got it. And so you're doing this for how long? How many years were you leading or kind of driving Imagine Apps?
Well, it was first myself as a freelancer, and then with David. So all in all, it's been 13 years.
Okay. And so why start a new company? What was the inspiration for Dapta?
So at one point, building Imagine Apps, when you create a software development agency, you're fortunate that you work with multiple different projects in different verticals. So we could work for financial services companies or for prop tech and construction companies, whatever. So you get a lot of experience into different industries. And I started seeing that there were problems that were not industry specific, but cut across many different industries and were at a software level. And one of the biggest problems that we had to solve each time we went on to create a software for a customer was the integration layer, integrating their custom software with third-party software. So the original idea for Dapta, which has evolved a lot, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later, but the original idea for Dapta is what's the easiest way for a company to build integrations between their software and third-party software platforms without having to write code, without requiring crazy engineering.
And what's an example of an integration? Just a simple example.
So a simple example is, let's say you have a CRM, and then you have, you do your accounting on spreadsheets, on Google Sheets, which is very common on many businesses. Even Imagine Apps, we did it that way. We had HubSpot, but we did our statements and all that on Google Sheets. So whenever you want to automate something, for example, you want to have all your customers and all their invoices nice and tidy, and you want to get reports and you want to analyze that data, you can just connect your HubSpot to your internal software system to a spreadsheet, and then just get everything centralized, and you can query the data. But to do that, you would have to write a lot of code, build an API between your system and HubSpot and the Google Sheets, and it was really messy, especially when integrating your own piece of software.
Got it. So you guys would just run into this issue. You build some software for a client, then you had to connect it with other systems, and each time you're building it from scratch, right?
Same problem,
running into the thing over and over.
Yep.
Well, before we go into the Dapta story, another kind of unique thing about you is you have this social media following or presence. How did that evolve? Like, when was that something when you founded Dapta, or was that something you did during Imagine Apps? Talk to me a little bit about you and social media.
Well, yeah, I started way back. So I'm a self-taught programmer. I had my HTML class in high school, but then there was so much I could learn from my teachers in high school. So I had to go find information elsewhere. So I did a lot of Google searches, and there were online courses. YouTube wasn't that big, and there weren't there was a lot of cat videos, but not a lot of programming courses like there are nowadays. Obviously, there was no Coursera or edX or all these e-learning platforms that you have nowadays. So you had to go into online forums and chats and trying to get knowledge from every place you could find. And there wasn't a lot of content in Spanish. So once I was able to learn and build my first software projects by myself, I thought it was only natural for me to give back and also start teaching what I had learned in Spanish. So I started creating courses in YouTube. This was a bit later, like 3 or 4 years after I started programming, but I started creating courses in YouTube. So this was like 2011, I think my YouTube channel, if you go to my YouTube channel, it says I started in 2011, I think. And I started creating tutorials for people to learn what I was learning, but they were in Spanish and there was not a lot of content in Spanish back then. So that went well and I got thousands of views. I remember I had a video that got like 1,000 views within a couple of months, and that was insane. So nowadays, 2,000 views is nothing, and you can get ungrateful really quickly. You don't have the dimension of how many people, how many people is 2,000 people, you know? But back then, it felt like the whole world was watching what I was doing. Then I went on to do Udemy courses to get some money, basically to have a passive income stream. So I did that, higher level of production, got about 4,000 students on Udemy. And I always felt I had to give back with what I was learning and create courses around that. So that was my first engagement with social media. I wasn't consistent. Maybe I would have built Platzi if I was posting more videos. I don't know. But I wasn't consistent. So I just kept building software. I didn't create a lot of videos. But then fast forward 5-6 years, I started going hardcore on LinkedIn and Instagram, TikTok, and these new platforms. And that has been one of the biggest drivers of growth for my businesses. Because when you have a large social media following in LinkedIn or TikTok or Facebook ads or Facebook organic, you can drive a lot of traffic that's very cheap, low CAC. So you are acquiring customers at a much lower cost than your competitors. So I always saw that as an advantage, and I just kept putting out content.
And so kind of organically, kind of though your entrepreneurial journey, your content creator journey was also very organic.
Oh yeah, right? For sure. Yeah.
And because that's somewhat unique to run into. Maybe nowadays we're seeing that more often, but definitely I find it somewhat unique to have somebody with a deep technical background who also has this kind of commercial sense and a marketing sense about them. So that's super cool. And so coming back to the founding story of Dapta, it's one thing to say, hey, I see this other opportunity, but you're running this other company. So what was that almost, I would say, like the emotional decision to say, you know what, I'm on this path right now with Imagine Apps. And whenever you see the future, right? Like I'm more excited about putting on a different entrepreneurial hat and moving forward with this new idea. So what was the final thing that like pushed you over the edge and say, it's time to start a new company?
So I've always wanted to build something big, something global. Very early on, I had experiences where I would build an app, and we built this app with David, my partner, around soccer for the World Cup in 2014 in Brazil. And this app went viral. It had like a 1.5 million users all over the world, 52 countries. And that opened our eyes that we could build something global from our bedrooms. You know? That was a great experience because I had that constantly reminding me that you could build something that could just blow up and take over the world. So I always wanted to do that. And in a services business, it's really hard to scale. You are highly dependent on human capital. So you have to grow, you have to hire more people. I love dealing with people. I think that's one of my core skills. But to build a huge business, you would have to have a huge workforce. And at some point, we realized that wasn't going to be the best path to build the global business that we wanted to build. So it was a really hard decision. We were working on some projects internally. We had Dapta, but we were also building a recruiting network called Imagine Network. So we had a couple projects that were products that we were working on. Dapta just made a lot of sense because we could see a future where people were building software without the need for expensive developers. So it was really exciting to see a future where you could build software very low touch, not a lot of deep technical expertise. And on the other hand, well, we knew that we couldn't scale the business to where we wanted it to scale. So building a software as a service product, I had always wanted to do that. I got a lot of experience from working multiple software projects for my clients. And it was a real problem that we saw every day. It was really exciting to solve that problem, be one of the first in the world to solve that problem and sell that solution to every company in the world. So that was really exciting, the global aspect.
So you got conviction on this idea and said, okay, let's go do it. And then maybe real briefly, before we switch gears, so how did you go about starting, funding the company? Obviously you had experience already as an entrepreneur. How did you think about, I raise capital? How do I do it? So talk about those initial steps of the formation of the company and the decision whether or not to raise external capital.
Yeah, so when we started the first version of the product, obviously we started with customers from my first business, Imagine Apps, and we got a lot of feedback, and the feedback was really positive, and they were using it, and we had good results. At one point, I decided to apply to the 500 Global Accelerator, and I got in. So it was like, I think this was January of 2023, and I hadn't even formed Dapta as a separate entity.
And why did you decide to submit to an accelerator?
Well, I had known about 500 for a while.
Okay.
I followed some of the managing partners, Santiago Zavala, which is a deeply technical guy, but also a very good VC. I knew he would get it, so I wanted to pitch them and get their feedback on a very highly technical product. And they really liked it. They gave me good feedback, hard questions, and I liked them. I had a good feeling about them, so I decided to. We didn't have much. It was just a rough MVP.
But I think it's further step back. Why did you decide to think about an accelerator? Like, what was your need? Well, you could have in theory said, "Hey, go to some of your clients or other people." I'm sure you built relationships with people who had capital. Like, how did you think about, I should go to an accelerator? I'm thinking about it.
That's a good question. So we were funding it internally because we had already developed the MVP and we already had people using it. So we had funded it with the cash flow of the company. So at one point we couldn't keep funding it ourselves. So we had to get capital from a different source or just cut down on our development costs, right? I wanted to keep going. I wanted to keep feeding it and growing it. So going back to the vision of having a big product, global product, I thought VC was the best way to do this because you have a different mindset your investors have a different mindset, your goals are different, the way you approach your business is different than if you're building a cash flow lifestyle business, right? And I wanted to go big. So I think that was the main reason for applying to an accelerator. And also, I think they took a very high risk because we didn't have much. It was a good idea, but we had a long way to go before we could have something to show for. So I liked to have a partner in them that could help me out, think it through.
Yeah, very cool. I love that team. I think they're great. So
I think they were the original co-founders. So I love the team at 500. Santiago, Rene, Regina, all those guys.
So Dapta's gone through a couple of phases, at least 3, right? So maybe we start there. What was the first phase, and when did you realize you had to need to adjust to go, pivot or change the business? Yeah.
So the first phase was Dapta as the integration platform, and we called the product the API builder back then. So the first idea was integrate your software products with an API layer with no code. I think the key to that first phase was that my hypothesis was the user was going to be a developer, so a highly technical user. And having my community of followers and developers, entrepreneurs, I'm able to test these ideas very fast and get feedback really quickly. So I went out and I did a couple of videos. I'm working on this. What do you guys think? And I got a lot of people interested in trying the product, and they tried it. They all hated it. Every single one of the developers hated it. They couldn't use it. They didn't understand what it was for. So I was coming from solving a problem from the perspective of the software agency, not from the developer perspective. So that was something that I wasn't differentiating. And that was one of the first realizations, like, who's our customer? What problem are we solving for them? There's a problem. Yes, this is a problem, but a problem for whom? And how can we solve it for them, right? So I've never been in love with the solution. I've always been in love with the actual problem. So we kind of like peeling an onion. We kept trying to understand, like, what's the real problem here? Is it integrating API A with API B? Or is it like providing a solution to a process within a company?
Yeah.
So in that case, your user is not the developer. It's the person that gets benefited by the solution. So phase 2 was instead of API builder for devs with no code, we were kind of like a workflow builder for go-to-market people.
So before you go on to phase 2, that's a pretty big shift. Like to go from tools for devs around integrating different software to go to market, right? And then, you know, I think for most people who know Dapta today, they think of you as AI. So talk to me a little bit about how AI fit into all of this, and to going from devs to go to market. That feels like a big change.
Yeah.
And so how did you do that? Like,
yeah, so I like to get validation with people paying for the product. And my first set of customers were people that I already knew, and I had built relationships from my previous company with them. So it was kind of a no-brainer to sell to them. But when I tried getting new customers, no one would buy the product, like literally no one. We would get one customer every month. We would get a lot of users and a lot of people saying, oh, this is really cool, but no one paid for it.
yeah.
So it was like a 3-month period where we didn't get any actual validation of people paying for the product. I think it was a long time. We should have done it earlier. So we started looking into the people that were actually using the product. Because remember, I gave the product to a bunch of people to test it out and try it out. And we noticed that the people that were actually using it were using it not to build APIs for their internal software or whatever. They were building integrations with external software. So I remember one of the earliest use cases that we had was company called OnTop was using Dapta to integrate their Google Sheets with ChatGPT to write blogs. And to write blogs at volume, because they had a very aggressive growth strategy. And we noticed some other people were also creating integrations with ChatGPT. So all of a sudden we noticed that the people that were actually using the product were trying to build ChatGPT wrappers connected to their things. So that was a realization because they weren't devs, they were go-to-market people. It was the marketing manager, it was the sales operations person from the company. So we started diving deep into what problems are they facing, what challenges are they trying to solve. Yes, the integration solves the problem, but that's not the way to go to market. The way to go to market is with the problem they're solving and the solution. So that was step 2 or phase 2 of Dapta. Dapta as a workflow builder for go-to-market solutions.
Got it. Okay, so first of all, let me pause there too. That's wild, right? Because you kind of put your product out into the market. You assumed they would use it a certain way, but they end up using it in a very
completely different
way.
Yeah.
And I think the cool part, probably for other founders to learn from, is I think what you said before. Don't fall in love with the solution, right? Fall in love with the problem, right? See what people are doing and evolve from that. Because, I mean, that's like in my mind as an investor, it's like the ICP fundamentally changed.
Yeah.
The value proposition fundamentally changed, right? there was this common technology that you had, but the problem you were solving, the people who were using it were very different. So super interesting.
Yeah. I think the product was very similar, but the solution itself, because you can have the same piece of software be two different solutions for different ICPs. Yeah. It was the same product, but the solution it was providing for
it's almost like ICP. Lego blocks, and you gave it to these people, and you thought they were going to be building these certain castles, and they built something totally different.
Yeah, they built a car or something. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so now you're in phase 2, so it's more go-to-market and using Dapta as a platform to connect and leverage AI tools like ChatGPT, plus integrate with other software. So there's a phase 3. So what happened in phase 2 and what led you to phase 3?
Well, what led us to phase 3 was my co-founder, Felipe. So he joined the team when we were in this phase of discovering that people were using it in a different way. And I think that was one of the key elements of Dapta's evolution, that we gave it to a lot of people and we were really good at observing them use the product and get insights, actionable insights from them. So Felipe joined. He is also technical, so he can understand and develop technical solutions, but he has also a very good go-to-market vision and skill set. So we told him what we were doing. He looked at the product and he saw some of these use cases for blogs, the on top use case. And he was like, guys, like, are you blind? Like, this is it. Like, we could sell this to everyone. We should package this in a way that's easy for any company to do this exact same thing. And the problem is clear. The solution is clear. It's plug and play. Everyone's going to use it. So that was the beginning of the third phase, which was Dapta as a workflow automation tool focusing on AI related use cases. And the ICP was go-to-market people. So sales operations people, marketing specialists, operations folk also. Right. So he went like straight to build a template and a use case. And we had a big shift in which we started marketing and selling the platform. Dapta as a platform, we started selling and marketing the use case.
Got it. So
we started doing a marketing around automate your blog creation with Dapta, but not use Dapta, a cool integration platform.
Got it. So I'm going to play this back. So you basically had this set of Lego blocks that you start to see people using it in different ways than you thought. But instead of saying, hey, we got a bunch of Legos, do whatever you want, it's like, hey, use Dapta to solve this specific problem that you happen to see everybody, really get a lot of engagement from and whatever, and just focus the company on those use cases and also the ICP. And how did you end up focusing more on SMBs as opposed to enterprise or whatever? How did that evolve?
Well, that's a good question, because I think the product, you can have your go-to-market strategy dictate your product strategy, or you can have your product strategy dictate your go-to-market strategy. So because we were always in a go-to-market strategy where we got a lot of people using the product, analyzing how they used it, and giving them value through the product, we weren't actually doing sales. We weren't trying to go in and sell them what they need. We're just trying to understand how could this solve their problem, and then improving the product in that way. So one of the things we discovered very early on is that I thought, my original hypothesis when I started was that if we have 10,000 integrations with 10,000 software platforms, we're going to dominate. But that wasn't true for our ICP. Maybe we just needed 2 integrations.
Yeah.
And with that use case, the key was going to be, how could we get the user to experience value as quickly as possible? And in an SMB segment that wants to get value really quickly, and they're not wasting time, they just have a problem that they need to solve, getting them to value quickly is the most important thing, because they're going to try a lot of products. But if your product is the fastest one to deliver value, then you're going to be the solution they choose. So we try to build these templates and these use cases for small companies to just try them out very fast, get value fast, and then grow from there. So our go-to-market strategy and product strategy are very much aligned. We're not going to people and trying to sell them
Yeah.
on a solution. We're asking them, what problem do you have and how can they solve your problem? And
So it's all product-led growth and people discovering, right, and then improving that. So I'm going to shift gears hard here for a moment. So one of the interesting things about Dapta is, you built this company in Colombia. You've got this history in Colombia, but you have users in a lot of places, especially the US. So when you started the company, did you have an ambition for it to be global from the beginning? Did you start in Latin America and then get some customers in the US and then evolve that way? How did you think about building, the geographic footprint of Dapta?
One of the motivations of building a second company was to build something that could be huge and can be global and very scalable. So we always had the global markets in our minds, but especially the US market. Because if you can win in the US is the toughest market in the world, right? If you can win in the US, you're going to win everywhere else because it's the most demanding. To compete in the US, you have to raise your bar. Right. And we always had the goal to be a global product, but we knew that if we won in the US, then all the other places around the world would be not easier, but we could win on all of them. But we also knew we had an unfair advantage in LatAm. So we could acquire customers at a very low acquisition cost because of our social media efforts and networking and positioning. And we could use those customers to improve the product, test new features, and then when the features were mature enough, we could get them to US customers. But we've had US customers from the first cohort.
Since the beginning. And then you made the decision to move to the US. So first, let's just start on why did you decide to move? And then second, talk a little bit about kind of how you see the team evolving between, who's likely to be in the US, what operations or what types of roles you see staying in LatAm, in the long term.
Yeah. So I moved to the US as I was starting the company. And going back to like the global vision, our product is not even in Spanish, even though we have a lot of Spanish speaking people. We just haven't had the time to translate it. And we figured if we could do it in English and people could just use Google Translate or something, that would work for them. But if we had the product in Spanish, we would be so much better in acquisition and retention in LatAm.
That's very funny.
But we haven't optimized for that.
So that's another proof point that it was always global. If anything, it was US focused from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. And I decided to move to, I've always dreamed of moving to the US. I like Colombia and I think it's a great place and my family's wonderful and I miss them, but I've always had the dream to live where I could step up my game and just compete with the best in the world. And I've always thought of the US as the best place to compete and build a business. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So
we had to play some Frank Sinatra when we put this video together. But.
Yeah. So I always wanted to come here. When I first moved, I moved to Miami. So I got my visa, moved to Miami, started working from Miami. When it was like 2 years ago when Miami was at its peak post-pandemic, a lot of the funds had opened offices in Miami. It was all very exciting. Sure. I really liked the city. I really liked Miami. But then I recently moved to Phoenix, to Arizona. I live in Scottsdale. So the reason behind moving to Arizona was that most of our customers are small and medium-sized businesses here in the US. A lot of them boring businesses. So people that do lawyers, accountants, people that have marketing agencies. Sure. These people are not...
And I love them all. They're very exciting to me. But
to me, they're the most exciting people in the world. But they're
traditional businesses.
Traditional businesses. They're underserved, right? You have ChatGPT with awesome products, and then you have the enterprise AI products. Sure. Who's serving them? So I came to Phoenix, or I went to Phoenix because I wanted to be closer to those types of businesses, kind of the backbone of the American economy. And I've heard you say this, but like 90% or 95% of people are employed by small and medium-sized businesses. I do think they're the backbone of the economy. And if you can deliver value to that huge market, they have very similar problems.
Yeah.
So you could do use cases that apply to a lot of them.
Yeah, it's super interesting when you look at the people who've done very well with building technology companies for small businesses. Obviously you've got some great companies here in the Valley, like Intuit, but you have a lot of companies who are not based in the Valley serving small businesses, whether it's Shopify up in Canada, whether it's HubSpot in Boston, whether it's GoDaddy in Phoenix, right? So that's super interesting to be close to your customers, like be in that environment that's kind of representative of your ideal customer profile, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you've been to our office. Our office is in a very modest office building that's awesome, and I love my office. But the people in our building, most of them are customers.
No, you have a dermatologist. You have you're the classic small business strip mall.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
And those are our customers.
And so then, how do you see the company evolving? Who's going to be in the U.S.? Who's going to be in Colombia or other parts of LatAm? How do you see the organization evolving? And again, because there's some founders watching this who are thinking like, oh, if I go to the US or so how do you think about that?
One of the reasons of moving to Arizona was also the talent pool. So I think one of the things that Miami lacks is a deep technical talent pool. There's a lot of tech companies in Miami, but the universities there don't pump out as much talent as some other universities. And in Arizona, you have ASU, Arizona State University, that has a good computer science program, marketing program. So there's a deep talent pool. I think our vision for building the team is we're going to keep our engineering in LatAm, mostly in Colombia. I think we have awesome talent and people that have built very cool products and global large-scale products from different companies. And I think that the talent pool there for engineering is really good. We want to have in the US more product and product marketing people. There's not a lot of product-led businesses in LatAm that have scaled globally. So I think it's really hard to find product people that are focused on PLG, go-to-market strategies and acquisition and growth loops and all that. So we're going to have our product and product marketing teams in the US in Phoenix. And then our engineering team back in Colombia. And eventually sales, if we end up having a sales team in the US, probably we're going to have a few.
Got it. But so if I were to summarize, the product management, product marketing, probably some fair amount of go-to-market, depending on how that evolves, but with the core dev and engineering team in LatAm.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, one kind of business thing that we'll try to keep it tight, but I think is a lot of founders, whether they be in Latin America or anywhere, would love to hear is the whole area of product-led growth, right? I think in the world of AI, especially, there are a lot of folks focused on the enterprise where you're selling and you're pitching, you're going to trade shows and all this. And you chose to go in a different direction, which is product-led growth, where people come to your website, they try it out. If they like it, they pay. If they don't, they don't. So talk to us about why you ended up kind of focusing on product-led growth and what you've learned and what do you find is the key to success for product-led growth?
Yeah, I hadn't asked myself why until now. So I think it comes from thinking or from a place of introspection. Like, what do I have to work with? I have never sold to the enterprise. I haven't sold to big banks or large corporations, either in the US or in LatAm. My background was in my first company, we sold software to mostly small and medium-sized businesses, much higher ticket than what we do right now at Dapta, but still same ICP. So I know I can navigate the decision-making process of a small business and a small team. And I knew I didn't have the skills, or my team didn't have the skills to go and sell to the enterprise. We also had when we started, some cash constraints, right? And we couldn't hire a very expensive enterprise sales rep. So we kind of worked with what we had, but also we didn't want to build a product for one customer and create a bespoke solution. And the reason for that was very simple. I had done that for the past 10 years. So I kept building custom things for customers. I wanted to build something that everybody could use and everybody could try and get value from very quickly. So if you add all that up, I had experience selling to the SMB. I knew how they made their purchasing decisions, especially with software. I had experience building software for these companies, and I wanted a product that could be horizontal enough that everyone could use it. That's why I decided to go into PLG. And then that also drives the go-to-market strategy. Like the way I acquire customers is in social media, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. So I've always tried to match the whole go-to-market strategy from how we acquire customers and what channels, like TikTok videos and Instagram. I don't know if you would be able to get a Fortune 500 company out of a TikTok video. Maybe yes, I don't know. But I know I can get a high volume of people to be interested in something I'm building with videos, organic content, all that. And then I can move them to paying customers and activated customers with a self-service onboarding experience. And the way to crack that was just being good at building a good user experience. Something fast, something easy to get value from. And I'm really good at building software like that. Maybe I didn't want to go and build a bespoke solution for a customer, so I had to go really hard into making it as easy as possible for anyone.
And so, a company I admire greatly is Atlassian, and they're one of the pioneers in product-led growth. And there's so many things that if you can do that well, it's incredible. But I think you at this point you love this line. I think they in their IPO pitch deck they talk about our product is bought, not sold. Or maybe
I love that line.
But for me, a lot of the lessons from them is you build a product with the least amount of friction for them to try and see it and experience. And if it delivers amazing value, then just make it easy, right? And when you talk about, I forget what the number is, something like 45 million small businesses in the US and Latin America. I mean, having a salesperson hold their hand versus somebody just going, learning, getting what they need, trying it and going forward, that's amazing if you can make it work.
Yeah, and I also think if you think about the Atlassian story and how, I love that line where they say, we don't sell our software, people buy it from us. I think it's the same thing with us. And it's also, AI is changing everything, but a lot of businesses don't know how to use it. We can't go one by one doing consulting to hundreds of millions of small businesses and tell them how to use it. But we can create case studies, we can create use cases, we can show them how other companies are doing it. And they're going to be able to try it. And if they like it, they're going to pay and they're going to scale. So.
And that's the secret sauce. So we won't give all your secrets away. So now let's talk a little bit about our relationship. From how we met to how we've been working together, and either how similar or different NuMundo or I am in supporting you. So do you remember our first meeting?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a meeting. I was in Palo Alto for the 500 Marketing Hell Week. So I was kind of studying and taking notes.
And that was like maybe 6 or 7 months after you started the company, right?
Yeah, it's like 6 months. And then you had a lunch with one of the founders that was also in that cohort with me, Juan from Picker. I just ended up in your lunch. I think he invited me, do you want to join this lunch? And for sure, to meet a Silicon Valley investor, of course. That's fun. And then I ended up just having lunch with you and Juan. It was a very interesting first conversation because I wasn't expecting to meet you. So it was kind of interesting.
Well, do you remember anything? Did what I asked or any feedback I gave you on the idea?
Well, you asked a lot of questions, like deep questions around why. Okay, so I'm building the integration platform, whatever. Why? Because it's a problem for these types of people. But why? So I kept asking like why? So trying to go deep, understanding our problem. You also asked what our competitors were and how we were different from them. And that got me thinking a lot about differentiation. And I think we've talked a lot about differentiation. But that was the first time that I really understood like, hey, I need to really think about how we're going to differentiate in the market.
Yeah, no, it's funny. And then I don't know if you remember, one of the things I remember about the conversation that I told you, maybe it was a follow-up, but for me, for B2B founders, there should always be a case study in the pitch deck. Before Dapta, this is the problem I was trying to deal with. After Dapta, here's how the improvements, or, here's how they benefited. And I remember at that time, maybe just I'm not in that, generally speaking, in the dev space. I couldn't get my hands around it, right? So I kept encouraging you, make the value proposition super crisp. Yeah. Right? And we have
I think you put it nicely. You didn't understand what we were building.
Yeah.
It was really hard for me to, back then, having those conversations, really hard to explain the value proposition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you didn't understand really what we were trying to build. And that's on me because it wasn't, I wasn't communicating it clearly.
But this is feedback I give to all founders, right? The number one job in the initial pitch is that the investor understand, right? And usually a case study, it should be, they joke about it should be simple for your grandmother to understand, right? If you can literally say, here's a problem we solve, let me show you an example, and then at the end of the whoever it is, whether it's your grandmother or the investor, they go, I get it. That is goal number one. If you don't do that, then it's just like, I remember somebody once told me this a long, long time ago, it's like dogs watching TV. They're nodding their head, but they have no idea what the hell's going on, right? And so, but anyway, so that was our first meeting. Do you remember our second meeting?
Yeah, I think the second meeting was at Top Golf in Miami, and I think it was also coincidental that we met that day. It was the end of year event for On Top, one of our customers, and I think you asked me like, what's the update on the company? But you also asked me, how are you different? So I'm like, why does this guy keep asking all the time, why are we different? Like I've already told him like 10 times. But it was obvious that it wasn't clear, and you couldn't get what we were building was different from our competitors.
Okay, and so then the third time was a little more deliberate. It wasn't an accident. And I forget, I'm assuming I reached out to you, but I don't remember. We were doing this thing in Columbia Tech Week. I think you were going to be a speaker. And so I was trying to meet with all of the speakers before the event. And so I said, hey, I'm going to be in Miami. Why don't we meet in Miami? And so we met in Coconut Grove. I remember we were at this hotel where I was staying at. It was like this atrium, and then it started to pour rain, right? But we booked an hour, but we ended up speaking for like, I don't know, 3 hours. We were there for a long time. And maybe this time I'll share with you my experience, right? So I remember at that point, you wanted desperately to show me the product. It's like, you go and then let me show you these panels, whatever. And I was still like, okay, tell me why, right? And then at this point, you talked about these pivots or these evolutions of Dapta, which we covered already. And to me, as an investor, I don't know if it's 50-50, but let's just, to make it simple, part of the investment decision is the business. Do I think it makes sense? Is it big? All that stuff. The other part is the founder, right? And at this point, you had evolved in the maybe about a year or so from that first meeting to there, the business was fundamentally different than what we shared at lunch in Palo Alto. And to me, that showed me that you had this growth mindset, right? And then the fact that as we got deeper into that Miami conversation, I'm like, something special is happening here, right? Because you started to see this inflection in growth, and all this stuff. And so the combination between, being a little self-deprecating, like I actually understood the business now. I think that you had clearly shown that you were agile as a founder, right, and open to being to looking at what's happening and adjusting. I don't know. That was a very powerful meeting. I enjoyed it, right? And the fact that we were there for 3 hours and it's this crazy rainstorm, I think was a good sign that we were connecting. Yeah. So I'm curious on your end, what you felt about that meeting.
So I thought the same thing. I was like, again, this guy's asking me about why am I different? Like, how is he not getting it? Like, I prepared for that meeting. Like, I hadn't prepared for the other ones. So I know he's going to ask me about how we're different. So I prepared it. And then you kept grilling me on, but why wouldn't some other team just do the same thing, or how are you different? But I think in that meeting, you also started learning about our go-to-market strategies and how we acquired customers, which I think is very unique about our business and how I have evolved as as an entrepreneur. And you asked a lot of questions about acquisition, how do you acquire and how do you onboard and so on and so forth. So I think it was a really good meeting because I also had the chance to ask feedback on some of the things we were doing. And you have a marketing background. So I think you also understood a bit more the pain that we were trying to solve because we were not working for developers anymore. We were working for go-to-market people.
Yeah, I think that was totally, to me, you were a different company than the year before on many dimensions. Okay, fast forward, we go to Colombia, we see each other again at Colombia Tech Week, and we decide to kind of start digging deeper and doing now more formal evaluation or due diligence as an investor. I brought in one of my colleagues, Renzo Viale. So what was the experience of going through this more due diligence kind of process? And at least at the time, how was it either similar or was it very different from what other investors?
Oh, no, it was way different. So I wouldn't call it due diligence. I think your due diligence is more like a consulting, like a pro bono consulting. So it felt that like we had a consultant, like a startup consultant helping us think through some of the things that we were building. And I really liked that. And the team really liked that because it was myself, Felipe was also there. And you asked questions that forced us to think about problems that maybe we weren't thinking about. And then coming up with the answers led to really interesting discussions. But I think the thing that I got the most out of that experience working with you in your process was you understood our value proposition, I think, even better than ourselves. You're able to articulate it in a much better way than we could. So because we wanted to go big on the US market, we had a lot of problems on communicating our value proposition. And I think that's the most value we got from you in that whole process was you helping us articulate our value proposition in simple, plain terms that my grandmother would understand. And that was very powerful. Like I was like, oh, this guy gets us better than we get ourselves. And that's what really impressed me of that process, and it was very rewarding for us.
Yeah, no, I think on my end, I mean, part of I sometimes laugh when I put founders through the process that we put them through, but it's like there's a creation experience you're having with them, right? And it's brainstorming, it's all this stuff. And my hope is that regardless of whether I invest or not, that they're better off for having gone through it. And the interesting thing, which is not atypical for when I invest, is that you guys weren't in a fundraise.
No.
Right? And so I love to work with founders where if they're open to working with me and Renzo and other folks that I work with, out of cycle, it's even better because we don't have like a time pressure and it can be a very organic process. And for me, a big part of it maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not. It's also getting to know the team and the team getting to know me and the other folks that I work with, because this is a relationship. My hope is, I invest in a company and it's a 10+ year relationship because you guys are doing great, right? And I'm going to be there to support you and the team. And so that's a big part of the process. So I don't know if you guys got a feeling like, we would love to work with this person. Yeah,
I think we built a lot of trust because it's very different when you see someone like really get what you're doing and providing quality, insightful feedback. Like we could tell that you prepared those sessions and those meetings. Same as Renzo and your team. So it was very insightful. Every time we talked, we felt that we were learning something. And also we involved the rest of the team. So Aaron that manages our growth strategies and Paula and Dana from our sales team, they helped us create all the materials that we were sharing with you. And the feedback was kind of flowing downstream. So it was as if all our team was benefiting from the consulting you did for us.
So let's do one more example of this process, but then we'll share some fun stories about our relationship. But part of my model is bringing in my network to founders. And so there's somebody named Diego Bartoli, who I've worked with many times. He's a go-to-market expert. He's like this ball of energy. He moves super fast. He talks fast. He's from Argentina. But Diego and I talked after we made the decision to invest. And I said, Diego, I think you could help these guys a lot, right? And so I think it was maybe, we're all busy doing stuff and it was getting close to the end of the year. I think you had moved finally to Phoenix. And I think it was after Christmas.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, okay, so am I, and so is Diego. And essentially started like a messaging project that the ultimate goal was the launch of a new website.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the process of working with Diego and what were the results, right? Like, what was the impact of that work?
Yeah, I think, so Diego's great. And when you introduced us to Diego, we had a very important problem. And that was that we had already worked through our value prop and the real problems that we were solving, solutions, and we had worked through our value proposition internally. But then it's a big step when you solve it internally, and then how do you communicate it with the world and your customers and everyone? And that ultimately translates into your website. If your website is not conveying your value proposition correctly, then you're not going to get the customers that you want. So I think that was a big challenge that we're trying to solve. You were from the beginning of our relationship, you were always very interested in our website. And I always found that very interesting. Like, the website is very important for a product-led growth company, but you were very obsessed. I don't know if obsessed is the word, but you were obsessed by our website. And how could we improve it, and how could we change it, and adding customer stories and all that. So Diego really helped us translating that value proposition that we had defined internally and that we worked really hard on defining, and how could we get that out to the world in our website. And we launched the website. It was like a month of really hard work. Aaron from our team was the one behind the whole release of the new website. A lot of work. He's a boss.
Yeah.
And when we launched it, we saw the results instantly. Like, we could see the heat maps of where people were clicking, people reading through the new headlines and taglines and understanding at a deeper level what we were doing. Conversion just went up. So working with Diego helped us define what's her main message, what's going to be our secondary messages, what do we need a small business? Let's think like a small business. What do I need to get from this website to make the decision to buy? And asking those questions, Diego is like a Formula One racer. He just goes and he's really fast, and we're trying to keep up with his energy and his focus. But that's very challenging and very rewarding, because at the end of the process, the new website that we launched is awesome and it has delivered very interesting results. So I think that's a very tactical thing that we worked on, but the results were tremendous.
Yeah. So maybe we'll wrap up this section on like, how would you compare? We've done all these kind of interesting things. You've come to my house and stayed for a week along with Felipe. You've stayed at my house now twice. I visited you, like we talked about at the beginning, in a couple of different cities. I spent time with you in Phoenix, right? So what would you say is, if you had to summarize your experience of working with me, having worked with all these other investors, how am I different? How am I similar? Like, how would you kind of summarize the value that I add to you, or how you think about me?
I think the biggest thing is that we've been able to develop a higher level of trust than with your standard investor. But that comes from you and your team just giving so much knowledge and hours of work to us, and being available whenever we have a problem or whenever we need something, even if it's not urgent or we're just trying to brainstorm or something. You guys are always there to help us and provide value. You also bring a very fresh perspective. You always talk about first principles thinking, and you always bring that to our conversations. Like, okay, let's think about it. What are we trying to solve? What's the real goal here? Is it to change the website, or is it to drive better customers, activation, whatever? So you ask deep questions that get us thinking about what we're really trying to do. but you wouldn't know what questions to ask if there wasn't so much trust, and we shared a lot of our problems or information with you, right? And I think it's a compound effect of you getting to know us on a deeper level, and then you being able to ask tougher, deeper questions that are going to help us succeed. So the more you know us, and then the more you know myself, the better questions you can ask, and the better questions I'm going to be asking to improve the company. So I think it's just a compound effect.
What's the funniest? We've shared a lot of funny experiences, but what are some of the funniest things that you can think of about our relationship?
Oh, well, you did my laundry once. That was very random.
Full service VC.
Yeah, literally. So yeah, I was staying at your house once, and I had to travel. I think I came from traveling. I don't remember the full story, but I had just my carry-on, and I hadn't been able to get to a dry cleaning, whatever. Yeah. And you just washed my clothes. That was very weird. Yeah. And obviously I was really happy and grateful, but that was awesome. Like, who would do that for you? Like, I really like that. And then your house has become like a hub of people in the ecosystem, and you do your events with, there was the event with the Stanford students and some of the VCs I've met. One time I met Robbie from Lead Sales in your kitchen. We're having coffee. It was like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever. And we just started talking about business and software and strategies. And he gave me a really good tip about demos and doing group demos and how they did it at Lead Sales. And that led to a deep transformation of our sales process in Dapta. Just a 5-minute conversation with Robbie from Lead Sales. So a lot of funny and interesting nuggets.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the most fun experiences was being in Phoenix. We spent the whole day working on your pitch deck for your upcoming fundraise.
Oh, we did. We knocked out the whole deck on one day.
Yeah, I think you thought we would work on a couple pages, but I'm like, no, the hell did I come to Phoenix for if we're not going to get it all done? Yeah. But then in the evening, we watched you on the final episode of Shark Tank Colombia. Which was also super fun to see how you've evolved as a founder, right? And your pitch and everything. But then also recognizing that one of the sharks had pitched to me.
Oh, that was really funny. Yeah.
You know, I asked certain questions in these initial meetings, and I showed you an email of the shark answering the questions like, you've answered these questions, haven't you? So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was really funny. And we also got you to record some content with us.
Yeah, so it was a blast. To kind of wrap up our conversation, I mean, you guys have gone through tremendous growth. I think the last year you've grown 12x your revenue. You're in the middle of a fundraise now. You're going to be adding to the team. So tell me a little bit about the culture that you're building, or the culture you have at Dapta. You know, what's the environment like? What do you want to, what type of people would you want working at Dapta?
We're building a culture, and this is also highly influenced by my co-founder Felipe. We've always talked about having a culture of builders, and we've put a lot of effort in getting people that can build things. And I actually have a sticky note on my monitor at home that says build more. So we want people that can influence our product directly. So even our salesperson or our go-to-market person, they should be able to build something and impact our customers directly. So we're trying to find people that have, maybe not being programmers, but they have enough technical knowledge that they can build things. And with AI, you can build anything nowadays, and Cursor and all these crazy tools. So we want people that can have a direct impact in our customers, their experience, our growth, without having to go through lengthy software development lifecycle processes. So just, you have an idea, go build it and implement it and try it out. See what happens, measure the results. We have a culture of experimentation. So we have a hypothesis. What's the fastest path to test that out? And we can test it out today. We have such an amazing user base that if we push a new release on certain feature today, we're going to have thousands of customers using it by a couple hours later. So we can get very fast feedback. So in a culture of builders plus fast feedback loops, I think that's the best engine to grow very large business.
Got it.
And
So
really
people
excited.
who are moving fast can get stuff done. I'm sure asking for help, but you want them to intrinsically say, okay, I'm going to do X. I'm going to go build it, right? That's super cool. Well, I'll just finish with this. I'll tell you, kind of my view on you and the team and all that, and kind of, so look, I view a big part of my job is finding super talented people who are solving really important problems that could affect millions of people. That's basically my filter. If I'm lucky enough to have those three things come together, as an investor, it's going to be incredible, but more as a human, right? Like, these are long, hard journeys. These are super hard. Doing startups, what you guys do, I have so much respect. It's like impossibly hard, right? And so I want to support and work with people who are working on super ambitious things that if it works, man, that's awesome, right? Like, to just say I was a small part of helping that team achieve their vision. And, but a lot of it is finding undiscovered talent, right? If everybody knows the talent, then I have no edge as an investor, right? So for me, it's like meeting all these people, detecting signals. And I remember in that first meeting, I had no idea what the hell you were building. But the more we sat there, it's, the Grapevine was the name of the restaurant. And, in downtown University Avenue in Palo Alto. The more you talk, the more I'm like, I don't know what the hell this guy's building, but I like this guy. I liked your story as a founder, the way you communicated. And then every time we met, it was like another reason to want to meet with you again. And I remember the moment, I think there was an actual moment, you're on stage at Columbia Tech Week and you're answering a question and I was like inspired. I'm like, okay, I got to come up with an excuse to work with Nico and Dapta. And so thankfully, as we got deeper, I think the feeling was mutual. And as you say, as I peeled more of the onion back, the more excited I got about what you were building. And so anyway, I just want to thank you for you and your co-founders opening up, the trust for me to invest. And I can't wait for the future, right? I think the best is for sure yet to come, and really excited about it.
No, it's an honor. I think what you've said, the way you invest in founders and the way you work with founders is very different, and we've felt that. And the level of trust we've built, I think, is very important for all the challenges that are going to come our way. And we feel that we have a partner that we can trust, and that will help us navigate all those challenges and build the best, baddest, most awesome company in AI for SMBs in the world. So thank you for investing, Ivan.
All right. Awesome.